In the dead of night, a cold wind howls across the white sands of New Mexico, 1896. A lone buckboard wagon creaks, abandoned, its wood stained with blood. Two pools of crimson soak the desert floor. A knotted handkerchief clutching blackened coins lies discarded, whispering of a crime too dark to be spoken. A father and his 8-year-old son vanish without a trace, their bodies swallowed by the endless dunes. This is no mere disappearance. It's a secret carved into the heart of the American frontier. A truth buried by men who wield power like a blade. You're about to descend into the forbidden history of Colonel Albert Jennings Fountain, a man who dared to challenge the untouchable, only to be erased from existence. Stay with me, because once you hear this, there's no turning back. Albert Fountain wasn't just a man. He was a force. Born in 1838 on Staten Island, he carried a fire that burned through the chaos of his time. A lawyer, a soldier, a senator, he walked the edge of danger with a fearless stride. In the Civil War, he fought for the Union, surviving Apache arrows and a night pinned beneath his dead horse. Wounded defiant, he helped resurrect the Texas Rangers, faced duels, and killed a man who dared challenge him. By 1873, he settled in Mesilla, New Mexico, a land of lawless ambition, where his fluent Spanish and relentless pursuit of justice made him a legend and a target. His life was a testament to defiance, a man who bent the world to his will. But power, like Fountain's, draws shadows. In the New Mexico territory, cattle rustling wasn't just crime. It was an empire. Men like Oliver M. Lee and Albert B. Fall, landowners with greed in their veins, built fortunes on stolen herds and unchecked influence. Fountain, as a prosecutor, became their nightmare. He dug into their operations, exposing corruption that reached the highest rungs of territorial power. His investigations weren't just legal battles. They were declarations of war. Lee, a rancher and part-time deputy U.S. Marshal, and Fall, a cunning attorney, saw Fountain as a threat to their dominion. Their rivalry wasn't political. It was personal, primal, a clash of titans in a land where law was a suggestion. On February 1st, 1896, Fountain and his young son, Henry, set out from Lincoln, New Mexico, after a grueling court session. Fountain had been prosecuting Lee and his men, hammering at their empire of rustled cattle. The desert road to Mesilla was treacherous, winding through the desolate white sands, a place where secrets could be buried forever. They never made it home. The evidence left behind was chilling. A blood-stained wagon, empty cartridge cases, Fountain's cravat and papers scattered like ghosts. A handkerchief, knotted with a child's precision, held 2 powder-blackened coins, Henry's last trace. No bodies, no witnesses, just the desert silence, heavy with questions that demand answers. What happened that night? The official story is a disappearance, a mystery unsolved. But dig deeper, and you'll find a truth so dangerous it was meant to stay buried. This isn't just a tale of murder. It's a revelation of how power protects itself, how men like Lee and Fall could bend justice, silence truth, and erase a man who dared to stand against them. You're not just watching a story. You're uncovering a hidden agenda, a system of control that thrives in the shadows. Stick with me, because the deeper we go, the more you'll see the world isn't what it seems. This is only the beginning. The next piece of this puzzle will pull you further into the abyss, where ambition and betrayal collide. Who were these men who clashed in the desert? What drove them to such ruthless extremes? Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because the truth waits for no one. In the next section, we'll unravel the rise of Albert Fountain, a man forged in fire, and the enemies who swore to destroy him. You ready to face what's been hidden? Let's go deeper. Picture a young Albert Fountain, standing tall in the California sun, 1860, his eyes sharp with ambition. The world was wild, untamed, and he was hungry for it. A lawyer by training, he'd already tasted danger as a reporter. sent to Nicaragua to cover William Walker's reckless filibuster. His words, bold and unflinching, exposed truths that got him arrested, sentenced to death. But Fountain wasn't the kind to kneel. He escaped, slipping through the jaws of fate, returning to California with a fire in his gut. This was no ordinary man. This was a warrior of will, carving his name into history's raw edge. You're about to see how his rise set the stage for a collision with forces darker than the desert night. The Civil War called, and Fountain answered. Enlisting in the Union's 1st California Infantry, he marched into the New Mexico Territory with the California Column, reclaiming it from Confederate hands. He married Mariana Perez in 1862, tying his fate to the land he fought for. But peace was a lie in those days. The Indian Wars raged, and Fountain, now with the New Mexico Volunteers, chased hostile Apaches through unforgiving canyons. One brutal night in 1865, he was ambushed, pinned under his dead horse, a bullet in his thigh, arrows in his arm and shoulder. He survived, not by luck, but by sheer defiance, crawling free to fight another day. Brevet Captain, they called him, but titles meant little to a man who'd stared death down and laughed. By 1869, Fountain was in El Paso, a frontier crucible where law was a whisper. He worked the United States Property Commission, dismantling Confederate remnants, then became customs collector, election judge, and tax assessor. Power followed him like a shadow. He co-founded the first Protestant church in El Paso, St. Clement's, planting roots in a land of outlaws and opportunists. Elected to the Texas Senate, he pushed through the bill reviving the Texas Rangers, a force to tame the chaos. But his radical Republican stance made enemies. Democrats challenged him to duels, and he killed one, Frank Williams, in a clash of steel and pride. Fountain didn't just live, he dominated, bending the world to his vision. In 1873, he moved to Mesilla, New Mexico, with Mariana and their 5 children. Here his legend grew. Fluent in Spanish, he wielded words like weapons in court, winning juries and cases with a charisma that burned. He founded the Mesilla Valley Independent, a newspaper in English and Spanish, and the Mesilla Dramatic Society, even building the Mesilla Valley Opera House, now the Fountain Theater. This wasn't just a man building a life. He was forging a legacy, a beacon of culture and justice in a lawless land. As a lawyer, he took on the infamous, defending Billy the Kid in 1881, only to lose when the system turned against him. Fountain didn't flinch, he thrived in the fight. But every rise casts a shadow. In Mesilla, Fountain's pursuit of justice made him a target. The New Mexico Territory was a chessboard of power, and men like Oliver M. Lee and Albert B. Fall were playing for keeps. Lee, a rancher with a badge, and Fall, a lawyer with ambition sharper than a blade, built empires on cattle rustling and political maneuvering. Fountain's investigations into their operations weren't just threats, they were acts of war. By 1888, he was in the New Mexico Territorial Legislature, defeating Fall in a bitter contest. Their hatred was a living thing, coiled and venomous, waiting to strike. The stage was set. Fountain's rise was a blaze of courage and defiance, but it painted a target on his back. Lee and Fall weren't just rivals. They were predators, and Fountain was prey too bold to run. What happened next would shake the territory to its core. Stay with me, because the next revelation pulls you deeper into this forbidden truth. Who stood to gain from Fountain's fall? What secrets were worth killing for? Smash that like button and subscribe, because the next section uncovers the hidden forces that turned rivalry into bloodshed. You're not just watching, you're the New Mexico Territory, 1896, a land of jagged horizons and unspoken rules, where power wasn't won by votes but by blood and cunning. Albert Fountain stood at the heart of this crucible, a man who didn't just challenge corruption, he hunted it. His investigations into cattle rustling had become a blade pressed against the throats of men like Oliver M. Lee and Albert B. Fall. These weren't just rivals. They were architects of a hidden empire, men who thrived in the shadows of lawlessness. You're about to uncover the secret truth they guarded. A truth so dangerous it could only be silenced with a father and his son erased from the earth. This is the moment the game changed, and the stakes became deadly. Fountain's work as a prosecutor wasn't just legal, it was a crusade. Cattle rustling in the territory wasn't petty theft. It was a sprawling network of greed, feeding the wealth of men who owned the land and the law. Lee, a rancher with a deputy U.S. Marshal's badge, moved cattle like a king moves pawns, his operations cloaked in legitimacy. Fall, his attorney, was the mastermind, a man whose ambition could twist justice into a noose. Together, they were untouchable, their influence seeping into every corner of the territory's power structure. But Fountain saw through their facade, and his pursuit of evidence was relentless, a fire that threatened to burn their empire to ash. In Lincoln, New Mexico, January 1896, Fountain was closing in. He'd been assisting the prosecution against Lee and his associate, William McNew, building a case that could dismantle their operations. Every court session was a battle, every piece of evidence a grenade lobbed into their carefully constructed world. Fountain's reputation preceded him. His fluent Spanish swayed juries, his unyielding resolve shook the powerful. He wasn't just a lawyer. He was a force of nature, a man who could stare down outlaws like Billy the Kid and walk away unscathed. But this time, he was up against something darker. A conspiracy woven into the very fabric of the territory. The secret truth? Lee and Fall weren't just protecting their wealth. They were guarding a system. Cattle rustling was the surface, but beneath it lay a network of influence. Politicians, lawmen, and landowners, all complicit in a machine that thrived on corruption. Fountain's investigations were peeling back the veil, exposing connections that could topple more than just Lee and Fall. This wasn't about stolen cattle. It was about control, about men who believed they were above the law, untouchable by justice. Fountain's every move was a threat to their dominion, and they knew it. The desert wasn't just a landscape. It was their ally, a place where secrets could vanish without a whisper. As Fountain and his son Henry left Lincoln on February 1st, 1896, the air was thick with menace. The road to Mesilla cut through the white sands, a desolate stretch where the wind erased footprints and the night hid sins. They were alone, vulnerable, a father and his boy against a force that had already decided their fate. The evidence left behind, a blood-stained wagon, scattered papers, a child's knotted handkerchief, wasn't just a crime scene. It was a message. Someone wanted the world to know Fountain was gone, but they didn't want the truth to surface. Who ordered the ambush? What did they fear Fountain would reveal? The answers are closer than you think, and they'll change how you see power forever. This is where the descent deepens. The truth isn't just hidden. It's dangerous, a spark that could ignite everything you thought you knew. In the comments below, type "Unveil the Shadow" twice. It's not just a phrase, it's a signal, a commitment to seeing the world as it truly is. Hit that subscribe button, because the next section pulls back the curtain on the downfall that shook the territory. What happened in those final moments? Who pulled the trigger? The answers are waiting, but only for those brave enough to keep going. Let's dive deeper. The white sands stretch before you, a pale sea of dunes under a merciless 1896 sky. Albert Fountain and his 8-year-old son Henry ride their buckboard, the creak of wheels a faint heartbeat in the vast silence. They're heading home to Mesilla, but the air feels wrong, heavy like the calm before a storm. Fountain's mind is sharp, his eyes scanning the horizon. He knows he's a marked man, his crusade against corruption a death sentence in the making. This is the moment the trap closes, the instant where courage meets betrayal. You're standing on the edge of a truth so raw it cuts. What happened here wasn't just murder. It was an execution of everything Fountain stood for. They didn't see it coming. The ambush was precise, clinical. Shadows moved in the dunes, figures cloaked in the desert's dusk. Gunshots cracked through the silence, sharp and final. Fountain, a man who'd faced death in war and duels, reached for his Winchester, but it was too late. Blood soaked the sand, pooling beneath the wagon. His son Henry, just a boy, clung to his father's side. His small hands clutching a handkerchief knotted with care. When the dust settled, they were gone. Father and son, erased, their bodies swallowed by the desert. The scene left behind was a taunt. A blood-stained wagon, empty cartridge cases, Fountain's cravat fluttering like a ghost. Henry's handkerchief, holding 2 blackened coins, lay abandoned. A child's last mark on a world that failed him. Who pulled the trigger? The evidence points to Oliver M. Lee and his men, William McNew and Jim Gilliand. Lee, a rancher with a badge, had the means and motive. His cattle empire was crumbling under Fountain's relentless prosecutions. His power threatened by every courtroom blow. Albert B. Fall, Lee's attorney and a political predator, had his own score to settle. Fountain had humiliated him in the legislature, outmaneuvered him in court. Together, they were a storm of ambition and vengeance, and Fountain was the lightning rod. But this wasn't just personal. The ambush was a message to anyone who dared challenge the territory's hidden rulers. Cross us, and you vanish. The desert kept its secrets well. No bodies were found. No witnesses stepped forward. The white sands, vast and unforgiving, became a vault for the truth. Some whispered of Tom, Black Jack Ketchum's gang, outlaws who roamed the territory like wolves. But Ketchum was a convenient scapegoat, a name to distract from the real culprits. Lee and Fall's influence ran deep. Lawmen, politicians, even judges were tangled in their web. The crime scene was staged deliberate, designed to scream violence while hiding the hands that wielded it. Fountain's papers, scattered in the sand, weren't just debris. They were a warning. Keep digging, and you'll join him. This wasn't just a murder. It was a power play, a calculated strike to protect a system that thrived on corruption. Fountain's investigations had uncovered more than cattle rustling. They'd brushed against a network of control, a machine that bound the powerful in a pact of silence. To kill him was to silence a truth that could unravel it all. And Henry, his death was collateral, a cruel necessity to ensure no witness survived. The desert didn't just hide their bodies. It buried a revelation that could have shaken the territory to its core. You're closer now to the edge of that truth, but it's a dangerous place to stand. You feel it, don't you? The weight of what's been hidden, the pull of a secret that changes everything. In the comments, type "Unveil the Shadow" twice. Let it be your vow to see this through. Hit subscribe and ring the bell, because the next section takes you into the aftermath, where justice was twisted and the guilty walked free. Who protected Lee and Fall? How did they escape the noose? The answers are a descent into the heart of corruption, and you're not turning back now. The white sands lie silent, their secrets buried beneath blood and sand. February 1896 fades into a haze of whispers and fear. But the disappearance of Albert Fountain and his son Henry sends shockwaves through the New Mexico territory. A father and his boy, erased in a single night. Their wagon a blood-soaked monument to a truth too dangerous to speak. The territory buzzes with rumors, but the powerful stay silent, their hands clean, their eyes cold. You're about to step into the aftermath, where justice wasn't just denied. It was dismantled, piece by piece, by men who own the law. This is where you see the machine at work, a system that protects its own and buries the brave. The investigation began with a flicker of hope. Lawman Pat Garrett, the man who killed Billy the Kid, led a posse to track Oliver M. Lee and his men, William McNew and Jim Gilliand. The evidence was damning. The blood-stained wagon, the cartridge cases, the knotted handkerchief clutching Henry's coins. Suspicion fell hard on Lee, a rancher whose cattle empire Fountain had threatened, and Albert B. Fall, the attorney whose hatred for Fountain burned like a desert sun. But the desert gave up nothing. No bodies, no witnesses, just an eerie silence that mocked the search for truth. Garrett's posse chased shadows, their resolve tested by a land that hid its sins too well. In July 1898, near Alamogordo, Garrett's men clashed with Lee and Gilliand in a gunfight that left Deputy Sheriff Kent Kearney dying in the dust. The posse withdrew, their momentum broken, their will eroded. Lee and Gilliand didn't fight to the end. They negotiated surrender, a move that reeked of confidence. Why? Because Fall, the master manipulator, was waiting in the wings. In court, he wove a defense so airtight it defied the evidence. No bodies meant no murder, he argued, and the lack of witnesses turned suspicion into smoke. Lee and Gilliand faced trial for Henry's death, but Fall's legal sorcery saw them acquitted. McNew's charges were dismissed outright. No one was ever charged for Albert Fountain's murder. This wasn't justice. It was a performance. Fall's influence reached deeper than the courtroom. Politicians, lawmen, and judges were threads in a web of corruption, and Fountain's death was the price of pulling at those threads. The trial was a farce, a public ritual to absolve the guilty and warn the bold. The territory's power structure. Landowners, cattle barons, and their political allies closed ranks, ensuring the truth stayed buried. Fountain's investigations had threatened to expose a network of greed, a system where rustling was just the surface of a deeper rot. His erasure wasn't just personal. It was a message. Challenge us, and you'll vanish, your legacy scattered like papers in the wind. The aftermath wasn't just a cover-up. It was a rewriting of history. Fountain's family, shattered, clung to his memory. The Mesilla Valley Opera House, now the Fountain Theater, stood as a testament to his vision. Its walls later adorned with murals by his son, Albert Jr. The Masonic Lodge in Las Cruces offered a $700 reward for the bodies and the conviction of the killers. A reward still unclaimed, a silent cry for justice. But the territory moved on, its secrets locked away. Lee and Fall didn't just walk free. They thrived, their power untouched, their empire intact. The truth of that night in White Sands became a ghost, haunting those who dared to remember. You're standing at the heart of it now. A truth that burns, a system that devours the brave. In the comments, type "Unveil the Shadow" twice. It's your pledge to see through the lies, to carry this knowledge forward. Hit subscribe and ring the bell, because the next section digs into the hidden forces that shielded the guilty. How deep did this corruption run? Who else was complicit in silencing Fountain? The descent continues, and the truth is sharper than. The New Mexico Territory, 1898, is a place where truth bends under the weight of power. The trial of Oliver M. Lee and Jim Gilliand for the murder of young Henry Fountain ends in acquittal, a verdict that echoes like a gunshot through the hearts of those who sought justice. Albert B. Fall, the puppet master, walks away unscathed, his legal victory a testament to a system rigged to protect its own. The blood in the White Sands is dried, but the questions burn hotter than ever. Who else was complicit in this cover-up? How far did the corruption reach? You're about to plunge deeper into a hidden truth. A network of control that didn't just silence Fountain, but reshaped the territory's soul. This is where you see the invisible hands that pull the strings. The acquittal wasn't just a courtroom triumph. It was a declaration of untouchability. Lee, a rancher with a badge, and Fall, a lawyer with ambition sharper than a blade, were more than individuals. They were cogs in a machine. Cattle-rustling, the crime Fountain had pursued, was only the surface. Beneath it lay a web of influence. Landowners, politicians, lawmen, all bound by mutual gain. Fountain's investigations had threatened to expose this network, A system where loyalty was bought with land, wealth, and silence. His death wasn't just a murder. It was a surgical strike to protect a way of life that thrived on corruption. Consider the players. Fall wasn't just Lee's attorney. He was a rising star in territorial politics, a man who'd later become a U.S. Senator and Secretary of the Interior, only to fall in the Teapot Dome scandal. His ability to manipulate the law was unmatched, his connections a shield against accountability. Lee, meanwhile, wasn't just a rancher. He was a deputy U.S. Marshal, a title that gave him legitimacy while he ran cattle with impunity. Their allies? Judges who looked the other way, sheriffs who asked no questions, and politicians who owed their seats to the same empire Fountain had challenged. This wasn't a conspiracy of whispers. It was a fortress of power, built to crush men like him. The trial itself was a masterclass in control. No bodies meant no definitive proof of murder, Fall argued, and the desert silence backed him up. Witnesses? None dared come forward, their fear a testament to the territory's unspoken rules. The blood-stained wagon, the cartridge cases, Henry's knotted handkerchief. These were dismissed as circumstantial, shadows of a crime without a corpse. Pat Garrett's posse had failed to find the bodies, and that failure became Fall's weapon. The gunfight near Alamogordo, where Deputy Kent Kearney died, wasn't just a clash, it was a warning. Pursue Lee, and you pay with blood. Garrett's retreat wasn't cowardice. It was survival in a game already rigged. But here's the forgotten truth. Fountain's death exposed the fragility of justice in a land where power wrote the rules. His investigations had uncovered more than rustling. They'd grazed the edges of a system that controlled the territory's wealth, land, and future. To kill him was to protect not just Lee and Fall, but everyone who profited from the status quo. The White Sands didn't just hide bodies. They hid a truth that could have sparked rebellion, a demand for accountability in a land where none existed. Fountain's erasure was a lesson. The system doesn't bend. It breaks those who try. You're seeing it now, aren't you? The world isn't ruled by laws, but by men who wield them like weapons. In the comments, type "Unveil the Shadow" twice. Let it mark your defiance, your refusal to stay blind. Smash that subscribe button, because the next section pulls you deeper into the psychological grip of this machine. How did it control men's minds? What kept the territory silent? The truth is a blade, and you're holding it now. The New Mexico Territory, 1898, is a land choked by silence. Albert Fountain and his son Henry are gone, their blood long soaked into the White Sands, their names reduced to whispers in a territory that fears the truth. The acquittal of Oliver M. Lee and Jim Gilliand wasn't just a legal victory. It was a psychological shackle, binding the minds of those who dared to question. This wasn't merely a crime covered up. It was a masterclass in control, a system that didn't just silence bodies but crushed spirits. You're about to uncover how fear and manipulation kept an entire territory quiet, how the powerful turned justice into a myth. This is the hidden machinery of psychological control, and once you see it, you'll never unsee it. Fear was the first weapon. The White Sands weren't just a desert. They were a graveyard for defiance. Fountain's disappearance sent a ripple through Mesilla, Lincoln, and beyond. Challenge the powerful, and you vanish. No one needed to say it aloud. The blood-stained wagon, the empty cartridge cases, Henry's knotted handkerchief. These were louder than any threat. Witnesses stayed silent, not out of apathy, but survival. Men who knew Lee's operations, who saw his men ride out that February night, kept their mouths shut. To speak was to invite the desert's judgment, to risk joining Fountain in the dunes. This wasn't just fear of death. It was fear of erasure, of leaving nothing behind but a whisper. Then came the manipulation. Albert B. Fall, with his silver tongue and political claws, didn't just defend Lee in court. He shaped the narrative. He painted Fountain as a reckless crusader, a man whose ambition outstripped his wisdom. The newspapers, some swayed by Fall's influence, echoed this story, sowing doubt among the people. Was Fountain really a hero, or a troublemaker who'd pushed too far? The lack of bodies became a tool, a way to blur the line between murder and mystery. Fall's courtroom theatrics turned evidence into speculation, transforming a clear crime into a riddle no one dared solve. The territory's people, already wary, began to question their own instincts, their trust in justice eroded by a system that rewarded loyalty to power. The powerful didn't stop there. They controlled through division. Communities were pitted against each other. Those who backed Fountain's family against those who feared Lee's reach. The Masonic Lodge in Las Cruces, where Fountain was worshipful master, offered a $700 reward for the bodies and the killer's conviction. But even their resolve was tested. The reward, still unclaimed today, was a cry into a void, drowned out by the territory's unspoken rule. Don't cross the line. Politicians and lawmen, many tied to Lee and Fall's network, reinforced this divide, ensuring that any push for truth was met with suspicion or outright hostility. Unity was a threat. Division was their shield. This psychological grip wasn't just about silencing. It was about rewriting reality. The territory learned to live with the lie, to accept that justice was a privilege, not a right. Fountain's family carried on, running the Mesilla Valley Opera House, now the Fountain Theater. But their grief was a private wound in a public silence. The system didn't just protect Lee and Fall. It ensured their power grew, their names untarnished while Fountains faded. This was the true cost of their victory. A territory conditioned to look away, to accept that some truths are too dangerous to touch. You feel the weight of it, don't you? The way power can bend minds, make silence louder than screams. In the comments, type "Unveil the Shadow" twice. It's your rebellion against that silence, your claim to the truth. Hit subscribe and ring the bell, because the next section takes you deeper into the forgotten truths Fountain died for. What did he know that was worth killing a child? How close did he come to breaking the machine? The descent isn't over. Let's keep going. The New Mexico territory moves on. Its surface calm, but its undercurrents dark. Albert Fountain and his son Henry are gone. Their blood a fading stain in the white sands, their story a ghost in the wind. Yet their deaths left scars, not just on their family, but on the soul of a land shaped by corruption and silence. The machine that erased them, Oliver M. Lee, Albert B. Fall, and their web of power, didn't just win. It rewrote the rules of the territory's future. You're about to walk through the legacy of this crime. The ripples that carved paths of ambition, greed, and defiance. This is where you see how one man's fight, though silenced, still echoes, challenging you to question the systems that rule your world today. Fountain's death was a turning point. The New Mexico territory, already a crucible of lawlessness, hardened into a place where power trumped justice. Lee walked free, his ranching empire untouched, his badge as a deputy U.S. Marshal a mockery of the law. Fall's star rose higher. He became a U.S. Senator, then Secretary of the Interior, his name later stained by the Teapot Dome scandal, a fitting end for a man who'd mastered corruption. Their victory in 1898 wasn't just personal. It cemented a system where wealth and influence could bury truth. The territory's people learned a bitter lesson. Justice was a privilege for the powerful, not a right for the brave. But Fountain's legacy wasn't erased. His family carried his fire. The Mesilla Valley Opera House, now the Fountain Theater, stood as a beacon of his vision, rebuilt in 1905 and later adorned with murals by his son, Albert Jr. It wasn't just a theater. It was a defiance of the silence that swallowed him, a place where culture and memory refused to bow. The Masonic Lodge in Las Cruces, where Fountain served as worshipful master, kept his name alive with their $700 reward, still unclaimed, a quiet rebellion against the machine. His widow, Mariana, and their children lived with grief but also with pride, their lives a testament to a man who'd faced giants and never flinched. The territory itself bore the scars. Fountain's investigations had exposed the fragility of the corrupt system, planting seeds of doubt. Ranchers, lawmen, and citizens began to question the untouchability of men like Lee and Fall. Though the machine held firm, Fountain's death sparked whispers of resistance, a slow-burning demand for accountability. By the early 20th century, New Mexico's push for statehood brought scrutiny to its lawless ways, forcing reforms that weakened the grip of territorial elites. Fountain's fight, though lost in the desert, helped pave the way for a future where justice might stand a chance. This legacy isn't just history, it's a mirror. The systems Fountain challenged still exist, their shapes shifted but their essence unchanged. Power still protects itself, silencing those who dig too deep. The White Sands may be a distant memory, but their lesson is timeless. Truth comes at a cost, and only the bold pay it. Fountain's story dares you to look at your world with unflinching eyes, to see the networks of control that hide in plain sight. His death wasn't the end. It's a call to arms, a challenge to refuse the silence, to wield knowledge like a blade. You're part of this now. The truth you've uncovered isn't just a story, it's a responsibility. In the comments, type "Unveil the Shadow" twice. Let it be your oath to carry Fountain's fight, to see through the lies that bind us. Hit subscribe and ring the bell, because the final section brings this descent to its climax. What does Fountain's story mean for you? How can his defiance shape your path? The truth is a fire, and you're holding the torch. Let's finish this journey together. The New Mexico territory moves on. Its surface calm, but its undercurrents dark. Albert Fountain and his son Henry are gone. Their blood a fading stain in the White Sands, their story a ghost in the wind. Yet their deaths left scars, not just on their family, but on the soul of a land shaped by corruption and silence. The machine that erased them, Oliver M. Lee, Albert B. Fall, and their web of power, didn't just win. It rewrote the rules of the territory's future. You're about to walk through the legacy of this crime. The ripples that carved paths of ambition, greed, and defiance. This is where you see how one man's fight, though silenced, still echoes, challenging you to question the systems that rule your world today. Fountain's death was a turning point. The New Mexico territory, already a crucible of lawlessness, hardened into a place where power trumped justice. Lee walked free, his ranching empire untouched, his badge as a deputy U.S. Marshal a mockery of the law. Fall's star rose higher. He became a U.S. Senator, then Secretary of the Interior, his name later stained by the Teapot Dome scandal. A fitting end for a man who'd mastered corruption. Their victory in 1898 wasn't just personal. It cemented a system where wealth and influence could bury truth. The territory's people learned a bitter lesson. Justice was a privilege for the powerful, not a right for the brave. But Fountain's legacy wasn't erased. His family carried his fire. The Mesilla Valley Opera House, now the Fountain Theater, stood as a beacon of his vision. Rebuilt in 1905 and later adorned with murals by his son, Albert Jr., it wasn't just a theater. It was a defiance of the silence that swallowed him. A place where culture and memory refused to bow. The Masonic Lodge in Las Cruces, where Fountain served as worshipful master, kept his name alive with their $700 reward, still unclaimed. A quiet rebellion against the machine. His widow, Mariana, and their children lived with grief but also with pride. Their lives a testament to a man who'd faced giants and never flinched. The territory itself bore the scars. Fountain's investigations had exposed the fragility of the corrupt system, planting seeds of doubt. Ranchers, lawmen, and citizens began to question the untouchability of men like Lee and Fall. Though the machine held firm, Fountain's death sparked whispers of resistance, a slow-burning demand for accountability. By the early 20th century, New Mexico's push for statehood brought scrutiny to its lawless ways, forcing reforms that weakened the grip of territorial elites. Fountain's fight, though lost in the desert, helped pave the way for a future where justice might stand a chance. This legacy isn't just history, it's a mirror. The systems Fountain challenged still exist, their shapes shifted but their essence unchanged. Power still protects itself, silencing those who dig too deep. The White Sands may be a distant memory, but their lesson is timeless. Truth comes at a cost, and only the bold pay it. Fountain's story dares you to look at your world with unflinching eyes, to see the networks of control that hide in plain sight. His death wasn't the end. It's a call to arms, a challenge to refuse the silence, to wield knowledge like a blade. You're part of this now. The truth you've uncovered isn't just a story, it's a responsibility. In the comments, type "Unveil the Shadow" twice. Let it be your oath to carry Fountain's fight, to see through the lies that bind us. Hit subscribe and ring the bell, because the final section brings this descent to its climax. What does Fountain's story mean for you? How can his defiance shape your path? The truth is a fire, and you're holding the torch. Let's finish this journey together. The desert wind howls, carrying the ghost of Albert Fountain's defiance, but the New Mexico territory of 1898 buries its truths deeper than bones. Fountain's investigations, his relentless pursuit of justice, uncovered more than cattle rustling. They grazed the edges of a forbidden truth, a network of corruption so vast it demanded his silence. This wasn't just about stolen herds. It was about a system that owned the land, the law, and the souls of those who dared to question it. You're about to uncover the forgotten truths Fountain died for, the secrets that made his death and his sons a necessity. This is the heart of the abyss, where knowledge becomes a weapon and understanding changes you forever. Fountain's crusade wasn't just against Oliver M. Lee's rustling empire. It was against a machine that thrived on control. The New Mexico territory was a chessboard where wealth and power moved the pieces. Landowners like Lee, backed by men like Albert B. Fall, didn't just profit from cattle. They controlled the territory's future. Their network wasn't a loose alliance. It was a fortress, binding ranchers, politicians, and lawmen in a pact of mutual gain. Fountain's investigations were a torch in the dark, revealing connections that linked local sheriffs to territorial elites, exposing a system where justice was a commodity, sold to the highest bidder. What did Fountain know? He'd uncovered evidence that Lee's operations weren't isolated crimes, but part of a larger web. Cattle rustling funded political campaigns, secured land deals, and bought silence from those who enforced the law. Fountain's work in Lincoln, prosecuting Lee and William McNew, wasn't just about one case. It was a direct challenge to this machine. His files, scattered in the White Sands, held names, dates, transactions, details that could have toppled not just Lee and Fall, but the entire structure they served. To kill him was to burn the evidence, to ensure those secrets stayed buried in the dunes. And Henry? His death was the cruelest truth of all. An 8-year-old boy, clutching his knotted handkerchief, wasn't just collateral. He was a witness. The machine didn't take chances. A child's testimony, even a whisper, could unravel their carefully woven lies. The blood-stained wagon, the empty cartridge cases, the blackened coins. These were deliberate, a message to anyone who might follow Fountain's path. The territory's silence wasn't just fear. It was complicity, a collective choice to let the truth die with a father and his son. This was the price of challenging power. Not just your life, but your legacy erased. But here's the hidden truth. Fountain's death didn't end his fight. It exposed the machine's fragility. His absence left a void, a lingering question that haunted Mesilla and beyond. The Masonic Lodge's $700 reward, still unclaimed, was a testament to his impact, a reminder that some truths refused to stay buried. His family's opera house, now the Fountain Theater, stood as a monument to his vision, its walls later painted with his memory by his son. Albert Jr. Fountain's fight revealed a crack in the system, a glimpse of a world where justice might one day prevail. If only men were brave enough to seize it. You're holding that truth now, a spark that could ignite change. This isn't just history, it's a warning, a call to see the systems that still bind us, the powers that still silence. In the comments, type "Unveil the Shadow" twice. Let it be your vow to carry this forward, to never bow to the machine. Hit subscribe and ring the bell, because the next section takes you into the legacy of this crime. The ripples that still echo today. How did Fountain's death shape the territory? What lessons does it hold for us now? The descent continues, and the truth is yours to claim. Let's go deeper. The white sands stretch endlessly into the horizon, a silent witness to a crime that reshaped a territory and a man's legacy. Albert Fountain and his son Henry, erased in 1896, left behind more than blood. They left a challenge, a torch burning in the dark for those brave enough to carry it. You've walked through their story, from Fountain's fearless rise to the deadly ambush, from the corrupt machine that shielded the guilty to the truths that still haunt us. Now, as we stand at the end of this descent, you're not just a viewer. You're a bearer of forbidden knowledge, a man changed by the weight of what you've learned. This final chapter isn't just a conclusion. It's a call to awaken, to see the world through Fountain's eyes and wield his defiance in your own. Fountain's story is a mirror held up to the present. The New Mexico territory of 1896 is gone, but the systems he fought, networks of power that thrive on silence, corruption that bends justice, are alive today. Look around you. The powerful still protect their own, using wealth, influence, and fear to bury truth. Fountain's fight wasn't just against cattle rustlers or men like Oliver M. Lee and Albert B. Fall. It was against the idea that some are above accountability. His death in the white sands was a warning, but also a spark, a reminder that one man's courage can crack the foundations of even the strongest machine. You hold that spark now, and what you do with it defines you. His legacy lives in the defiance of his family, in the Fountain Theater where his son's murals keep his memory alive, in the Masonic Lodge's unclaimed $700 reward that still dares the world to uncover the truth. But it lives in you too. Every time you question the official story, every time you refuse to bow to the narrative spun by those in power, you echo Fountain's fight. He was a man who faced war, duels, and ambushes, who stared down death and never blinked. His story asks you, what are you willing to stand for? What truths are you ready to chase? Even when the cost is steep. This isn't just history, it's a blueprint for self-mastery. Fountain's life was a testament to the power of will, of standing tall in a world that demands you kneel. The territory tried to erase him, but his shadow looms large, a challenge to every man who hears this tale. The systems that silenced him still exist, hiding in boardrooms, governments, and institutions that shape your world. They rely on your silence, your compliance. But you've seen the truth now, and silence is no longer an option. Fountain's fight is yours, if you choose it. A path of courage, of unrelenting pursuit of what's right, no matter the odds. So, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you let it fade, or will you carry it forward? A blade against the lies that bind us? In the comments, type "Unveil the Shadow" twice. Let it be your oath, your declaration that you'll never look away. Hit subscribe, ring the bell, and share this video with those ready to see the world as it is. Fountain's story isn't over. It lives in every man who refuses to be silenced, who dares to challenge the untouchable. You've descended into the abyss and emerged with the truth. Now, go out and wield it. The world is watching, and it's time to make your mark.